Insulin is huge. And so we often use blood sugar regulating herbs and nutrients with our clients. So if someone is insulin resistant, we will use things to help regulate blood sugar. And just in a 6-week follow up, we may have people report that their brain's working better. And that's simply because we've reduced the insulin. You know, they're calling the like the type 3 diabetes term out there. That's highly linked to like sugar and insulin.
Yeah. And so type 3 on this, so type 1 is the inflammatory. That's due to the infections. Type 2 is the atrophic. Type 2 is the atrophic. That's the shrinking parts of the brain due to those hormonal imbalances. Type 1.5, or I just call it 3 because it's the third one on the list, is glycotoxic. And this is more type 1 and type 2 diabetes extreme. So type 1 is a total lack of insulin, right? And then type 2, where you could actually be giving too much, right? Type 1, you don't have any insulin, but then the problem is then they get you on insulin injections. And a lot of times people overuse insulin because they're not really educated on it, and they just can get their blood sugar back to normal. So with eating crap, so they just over secrete the insulin via the injection to bring the blood sugar back down. And that can cause problems as well. So type 1 diabetics, if they're on insulin, they can actually overshoot it. So the key is if you have type 1 diabetes, you still want to keep the insulin down, and you have to keep the sugar down as well. So you don't need as much insulin to get that sugar into the cell, number one. Then number two is going to be insulin resistance. You're making a lot of insulin. Your cells are just numb to it. So there's no supply issue with the insulin. There's just too much of it, and the cells are becoming numb to it. And we know that high glucose levels can create all kinds of problems with the brain. We know that there's certain beta amyloid plaques that can form in the brain, and we see that associated with Alzheimer's and dementia. We know that just high levels of insulin can create problems with people just with memory issues to begin with. And we know beta amyloid plaques, they actually get cleaned up in the brain with an enzyme called insulin degrading enzyme. The problem is insulin degrading enzymes' first priority is to break down insulin. So if you have too much insulin there, its resources are going to be spent on cleaning up insulin, and there won't be enough resources to clean up the beta amyloid plaques. So said another way, imagine you have a mop, right? And your kid spills some water or some juice. That's insulin. If your kid spills a little bit of juice, you can mop it up, and there's still enough absorptive qualities in the mop to go mop up the plaque. But if your kid spills a whole bunch of juice, well, now you go in, you mop up all that juice, but now the mop's so saturated, there's not enough absorptive quality to it to now go soak up and clean up the plaque. And that's why getting your blood sugar under control is so important. But if you go look at some of these studies, it's really interesting. The conclusion of a lot of these studies is, hey, we need to come up with a drug that helps improve insulin degrading enzyme, so we can use that enzyme to clean up more of the plaques. The people just miss the boat because their kind of focus is like on what kind of patentable drug can we come up with, where their conclusion, in my opinion, should be, hey, how can we change the diet so we have less insulin to have to clean up? Therefore, the insulin degrading enzyme can work better.
Absolutely. We were talking pre-show about skin. I was telling you some papers on skin I was looking at where there were tribal people in New Guinea that were studied, and they never found a single case of acne. So here's all these people working on acne drugs. When you look at a tribal person, they don't have acne. Same thing with Alzheimer's. You don't see these neurodegenerative diseases in more tribal people that are on a native diet and have exercise and adequate sunshine and vitamin D and all that. So it's just funny that the money is really spent in the wrong place. I mean, we really could reduce a lot of the drugs just by adopting some of these principles.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I like to look at the fact pattern, right? The fact pattern I think is really important. Walk me through your thinking of how you got here, right? So when you look at a researcher who's kind of university-based or drug-based, they're looking at, what mechanism, what pathway, what kind of, their bent is obviously is what kind of drug or procedure can we come up with that's patentable that can help with this mechanism. Now, that may be all well and good, but if the only lens that you're looking at it is through what procedure, surgery, or drug can you come up with, well, you're not going to be able to utilize the diet and lifestyle and nutrient avenues, because those I think are the most easy to, they're most accessible because you don't have to invest billions of dollars to be like, hey, let's keep the carbohydrate and the inflammation and the food down. There's not $1 billion industry there. So we're out to help the largest amount of people with the least amount of resources to do it. So when you have our fact pattern, our pattern is, where's the low-hanging fruit in regards to diet, lifestyle, and or specific nutrients that are cost effective to have a major effect on those mechanisms. And if you can see, of course, the diet strategies are already the most accessible.